Hey, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful Tuesday out there. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. A big time storm system beginning to crank up now and will really bring impacts through the next 48 hours or so, from snow to high wind to severe weather and maybe even a heavy rainfall and flooding threat for some folks. And I think after this, things get a little bit confusing. Honestly, the models kind of are differing a little bit as we get closer to Christmas time, and we're going to talk about that in today's video. I'll give you the latest on what I think is after this major storm and kind of who is maybe still in the running for a white Christmas and who we can kind of go ahead and eliminate. Now, with that said, if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. Like the video, comment, let me know where you're watching from and what you're seeing out there right now in Charlotte. Kind of a cloudy, foggy, misty, rainy morning so far, and that'll probably be the theme here for the next day or so. With that said, let's go ahead and jump on into things and start talking about that weather. Now, right now on satellite imagery, you can kind of see what's coming pretty well here. Notice up to the north, we have just this big area of kind of blue and green up into Canada. That is a pocket of cold air that is spilling southward, kind of borderline Arctic air even, and we just had this big Arctic air outbreak. Well, this is another big shot of cold air. Now, maybe not quite as cold. This might be a little bit closer to polar air compared to Arctic, but nonetheless, very cold air for this time of year, moving southbound, and you can see what's happening in front of it. Plenty of clouds beginning to develop in that warm sector. We're getting plenty of lift, and that is leading to, like I mentioned, rainfall, cloud cover, and already a pretty good warm up ahead of this thing. Now, don't get too used to it though, because like I mentioned, on the backside here, we are going to cool down pretty significantly, I think. And taking a look at radar, you can already kind of see some of that precipitation beginning to bubble up here through the southern parts of the United States, through Louisville, back down towards Bowling Green, Nashville, and then into the deep south, much of Mississippi, Louisiana, and into Alabama, with some pretty feisty storms this morning kind of working on through here. In fact, a bit of a severe weather threat with those, especially this afternoon as they get deeper into Alabama. Would not even be surprised to see a couple tornadoes, and we'll definitely talk about that. And then showers up through the Carolinas right now, and even up into the Northeast and into portions of Ontario, not far from Ottawa. We do have some icy conditions, so watching out for that for you folks. We've got plenty of cold air left up here, and then this warm, moist air, this warm conveyor kind of riding over that cold air. That's leading to rain falling into this cold shield, and thus we're getting some freezing rain and some sleet out there, into portions of Canada. So if you happen to be watching from Canada, let me know what you're seeing. Same story out here into Nova Scotia and to Newfoundland and Labrador, even seeing some of that wintry precipitation out and about. Now, other than that, across the country, things remain pretty quiet. Some snow showers into the plains, but a lot more quiet than what we're seeing out into the eastern half of the country. Now, watches, warnings, advisories, we're definitely filling in the map, and I told you yesterday it would probably look a lot more active, and sure enough, we'll start here into the Northeast. These kind of pink boxes that you're seeing, or I guess purple rather, not pink, are winter weather advisories through much of Maine, really the entire state, down through New Hampshire, Vermont, and even into portions of northern New York State there through the Adirondack. And I think we are going to see some pretty good snowfall over the next couple of days. Another place we're going to see some really good snowfall is up here into the upper peninsula of Michigan and into the western shores of Michigan, where I know I have some loyal viewers, so I appreciate you folks tuning in. Yeah, a lot of lake effect on the way. Same story here from Buffalo back down to Erie, off of Lake Erie, and then into the Tug Hill here through Lake Ontario. Plenty of heavy snow on the way. In fact, this could rival the snow we saw a week or two ago. These look like very impressive bands, and we'll definitely take a look at that. Now, other than that, a pretty foggy morning for a lot of folks here in your gray boxes. We've seen some fog out there, and that will kind of continue into the early morning hours before beginning to burn off this afternoon, as we say. So definitely watch for that if you're traveling. And eventually, I am expecting more wind advisories and high wind warnings to be added to this map. Already seeing some of that in this Dijon color through portions of Rhode Island, Long Island, and into eastern Massachusetts there. So definitely watch out for that as our storm system is going to begin to crank up. Now, other than those watches, warnings, and advisories, out west, we do have a couple areas with some winter weather into the Rockies. We've got some fire weather concerns down into California and kind of surrounding areas there. So definitely watching for that as well. All right, let's go ahead and discuss meteorology in minutes here, and it's all about this big storm. Let's talk about the evolution of it and the meteorology behind it. This afternoon, kind of what's happening is we have this big pocket of cold air. You can kind of see that cutoff low. That's just a cutoff area of cold, well, just pretty much cold air that's kind of stuck up into Canada. But what's happening is all of this air is kind of beginning to move south here, and that's creating a bit of a pressure difference, and that pressure difference is creating some vorticity here down into the southern plains, up into the Midwest as well. Now, what's going to happen is this is going to accelerate. This advection of cold air is going to become stronger and stronger, and eventually what is a positively tilted trough will begin to become negative. You'll see all of this vorticity become more kind of vertically aligned here, and that tells me that this is a strengthening trough and likely a strengthening storm system with it. And check out all of this diffluence ahead of it. This is all rising air over the eastern half of the country for tomorrow afternoon. That's going to create a ton of lift and a ton of precipitation, and likely a deepening low pressure system for your Wednesday. Now we get into Wednesday evening, this becomes negatively tilted. This creates even more lift and an even stronger system likely to develop here along the eastern seaboard, riding up the coast, bringing that heavy rain, bringing some snow, and bringing very strong winds before eventually this storm system pulls out of here and our next storm begins to enter the west coast by overnight Thursday into Friday. So definitely looking like an active pattern here over the near term, and really in the near term, a very active pattern. In fact, a severe weather threat this afternoon, a marginal risk up here for portions of western Florida Panhandle into southwestern Georgia, southern Alabama, extreme southern Mississippi through the Gulfport, Pascagoula area, and then all the way back down into Lake Pontchartrain and New Orleans, under the gun for a couple strong storms today. And that does include a tornado threat. I will show you. The tornado outlook today is quite large here from southern Georgia into southern Alabama. So definitely need to have a way to get those watches, warnings, and advisories. Like I said, would not be surprised to see a couple tornadoes. And guess what? That's not going to be the end of it. Tomorrow, another tornado threat here into eastern North Carolina, into the Outer Banks, Kitty Hawk, Elizabeth City, back down towards New Bern, Jacksonville, Beaufort, and or maybe it's Beaufort. I know South Carolina, we call it Beaufort. Let me know if you folks in North Carolina, I should know, I live here, call it Beaufort or Beaufort. I feel like they're switched, so let me know. And then all the way down into North Topsail Beach and even really into the Wilmington area as well, I think. But that's not the only threat. If we look at the overall threat for tomorrow, check this out. All the way from kind of the North Carolina, South Carolina line there, the kind of south of the border, you local folks will know what I'm talking about, all the way up the I-95 corridor into southern suburbs of Boston and into the Cape, running a marginal risk tomorrow for strong straight line winds. And I think this will be a very real threat. In fact, I think the winds are going to be something that really catch people off guard with this storm. We get so caught up talking about snowfall and things like that. And, to be fair, it's wintertime. That's what people want to hear. But the wind with this system on the rainy, warmer side definitely will be a concern that we need to watch for. So anybody here in this green box for tomorrow afternoon, strong straight line winds will be a concern. All right, let's break this system down region by region. We'll start in the southeast, then go to the northeast, and then we'll talk about kind of the Midwest a little bit and talk about some of that lake effect behind the storm system. And then we'll start talking about the long range, and I'll give you the latest on what we're seeing there. And it's kind of, again, a little confusing, kind of a weird pattern setting up here as we go towards the middle of the month and closer to Christmas time. We will also discuss that. All right, here we go. So latest NAM model. I think the NAM is doing an all right job with this storm. I was also going to show you the HRRR, but in the name of saving time, I'll just show you the NAM and then kind of tell you the differences between the two as we go along. This afternoon, though, the theme in the southeast is just going to be rain. Good old-fashioned rain with that severe weather threat down here into Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and portions of Georgia and the Florida Panhandle, like I mentioned. We get into this evening, it's just more and more rain. In fact, I am concerned about a bit of a flooding threat into the I-85 corridor of upstate South Carolina, back down into the Atlanta area and up into western North Carolina. Obviously, flooding in this area is a sore subject, rightfully so, after Helene moved through. So do take precautions. I don't want you to panic by any means, but do know that there is the threat for excessive rainfall this afternoon in that region. And really, even overnight tonight, you'll notice we're waking up tomorrow morning, we still have heavy rain falling into this area of upstate South Carolina, western North Carolina, and down into Georgia. Now, it's at this point tomorrow morning that the models begin to differ a bit. Now, they're pretty similar on the warm side. They both show all this rain. They show the severe weather threat in the areas I mentioned, but what becomes different is back here into portions of western Tennessee and western Kentucky. The NAM and the GFS are showing a little bit more snow than the other models. And I'll be honest with you, I think this is probably overdone a little bit. Now, I do think some folks in western Tennessee, western Kentucky could see some snowflakes fly, especially in the mountains. But I think the Cumberland Plateau up into the hills of western Kentucky, you're going to be hard pressed to get anything of significance. I do think that this shield of snow is slightly overdone on the models. So do be aware of that as you're kind of, looking at that and taking it into account. Now, what I don't think is overdone on the models is the severe weather threat tomorrow. Again, into portions of eastern North Carolina, we are going to run a bit of a tornado threat, not a big one, but one that is going to be noteworthy, and the winds are going to be absolutely ripping with these storms just above the surface. So any heavy kind of downburst we get will pull that wind down. We're going to see strong straight line winds. That will be a concern. And you can already see this kind of entire line of strong storms. This is tomorrow afternoon about 1 o'clock, moving really past the I-95 corridor through New Bern, getting back down into Wilmington, and then eventually up into northeastern North Carolina and even southeastern Virginia there into the Hampton Roads area for your Wednesday afternoon and evening. That kind of works on through during the evening hours through the Outer Banks, a strong QLCS or a quasi-linear convective system as we call it, just a squall line of strong storms getting through that region. And then I think by the time we get past sunset, things really begin to clear out. So the worst of it going to be today and tomorrow in the southeast. You will notice on the backside, we do have some of these snow squalls breaking out, and I do think that is possible. In fact, I think it's more likely we get snow from this than maybe a band of snow on the cold side of the storm system. So you folks in the Tri-Cities up into southwestern Virginia, the mountains of North Carolina, and even into eastern Kentucky there, do have a chance of snow probably Wednesday evening, even overnight Wednesday. You'll notice these snow squalls continue. That northwest flow kind of cranks up, and we very likely will get snow out of that at least. So either way, snow is going to be on the way, just depending on where we see it and when we see it, I think is going to be the biggest difference between our models. Now, another thing we need to talk about is the wind threat into the southeast, and I kind of pulled it north a little bit because I think the worst of the wind will be in the mid-Atlantic and really kind of Georgia, South Carolina, northbound, we'll say. This afternoon, not all that bad, a little breezy at times for sure, but overnight tonight, the winds will begin to pick up. And by the time we're waking up Wednesday morning, very gusty winds, probably gusting in and around 30, 40 miles an hour at times here into the eastern Carolinas, really even into the Piedmont of the Carolinas, up into southeastern Virginia. And notice this wind picking up in the northeast as well. I'll talk more about that in a second. We'll move on to that region. But Wednesday afternoon, a very breezy day into the Carolinas and Virginia. You're going to want to have everything kind of strapped down. Make sure Santa's not going to fly away in your front yard. I do think that will be a concern here through the Wednesday afternoon time frame and into the evening. Also, the mountains absolutely ripping with strong winds as that cold air begins to catch that warm air, and we get that sharp temperature and pressure gradient, really leading to some of these higher level strong winds for some of the higher terrains. Now, we get into the evening hours of Wednesday and still gusty for sure, but I think overnight Wednesday and by the time we're waking up Thursday morning, things calm down outside of the mountains. Now, the mountains themselves, West Virginia all the way down to North Georgia, still going to be quite breezy, gusting up into that tropical storm strength. Now, depending on your elevation, it could be a little worse, it could be a little less. You probably know your area more than I do, so if you're in somewhere that normally gets strong winds with a cold front, you'll get it here. If you're kind of in one of those sheltered valleys, maybe not so much. But definitely going to want to watch out for the wind threat and also a heavy rainfall threat. Like I mentioned, this is rain really just through the event. And you'll notice if I kind of click on some areas, we're clocking 3+ inches of rain here kind of down towards Elberton, Abbeville, South Carolina, back down into the Peachtree City area of Georgia. And then I am concerned about some upslope areas here along the Highway 11 corridor, including Table Rock, Mount Sassafras, even up into the US 25 and US 276 corridor there into northern Greenville County. Could see some excessive rainfall. So do be aware of that, not concerned by any means, but if you're traveling in that area, just know that is something we need to watch for. And obviously, like I mentioned, excessive rainfall is a sore subject, but all of that continuing all the way up the I-85 corridor. Charlotte, 1 to 3 inches of rain. Greensboro, 1 to 3 inches of rain. And then up even into southeastern Virginia with lesser totals, I think, back into the PD and the low country, as you're going to be a little more sheltered from kind of an ongoing training band of rain. But definitely be aware of this, and I do think some areas probably will get even more than 3 inches of rain, specifically in upstate South Carolina and kind of the Piedmont of North Carolina westbound into the mountains. All right, that's the southeast. What about the northeast? Obviously, kind of an active scene up here as well. Well, yeah, absolutely it is. So this afternoon, going to kind of be dreary, rainy. You'll see kind of these waves of precipitation working on through, and this is getting into this evening and overnight tonight. Another thing we need to watch for is some icing up here into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. This could be an appreciable icing event with 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of ice not out of the question. In fact, some areas could even see a little bit more. This is going to accrete very well, very quickly, as it's kind of a light glaze and it's just going to pile on top of each other. It's not going to be a heavy rain, which kind of can mess with the accretion process, but definitely expecting icing concerns there overnight tonight, and by the time you're waking up tomorrow, still ongoing in some of those places that cold air is trapped. Now, south of there, just a rain event for really much of the Northeast through Wednesday morning. Not seeing any snow pickup, but that will change by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon. That ice begins to fade into the Northeast as that warm air really overtakes the cold air at the surface through Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire. They also join the rain party, but notice some snow beginning to try to break out here into western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, and West Virginia. Now, I do think if we get a band of snow, this is the more likely place for it to happen. I don't think so much down towards Tennessee, North Carolina, and Kentucky, but western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, West Virginia itself absolutely could see some of that snowier conditions definitely try to work on in, and you'll notice that the whole band kind of works in. This is Wednesday evening. This is going to be the worst of it for the Northeast. This is the worst of the heavy rain into the southeastern portions of New England along the I-95 corridor, a flooding threat, a high wind threat, and then the heavy wet snow back towards the Finger Lakes, the Catskills, and up even into the Adirondacks as the storm pulls northward, all of that heavy rain and snow moving with it. And check this out Thursday morning. Talk about a band of lake effect snow. These are some very impressive bands of lake effect snow into portions of Ontario, back into Michigan, Lake Erie, and Lake Ontario popping off with plenty of these very feisty bands of snow, which obviously is going to be its own problem in the snow department. So even if the storm itself isn't necessarily bringing plenty of snow, what's behind it will bring these very feisty lake effect bands. And notice this continues all the way through Thursday afternoon as far out as our model goes. Now let's take a look at wind forecast up here. Today, really not all that windy. It will get breezy at times for sure, but the worst of it begins overnight tonight, and by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning and getting into your Wednesday afternoon, notice these strong winds working in, and I do mean strong down here into the Jersey Shore. We're talking gusts up near 60. Same story for Long Island, coastal Connecticut, down here into Cape Cod, Nantucket. Going to see very strong winds for your Wednesday afternoon. We get into overnight Wednesday. That's when the strong winds move inland up into western or really eastern portions of Massachusetts, down into Rhode Island, up into Connecticut, Long Island continuing with the strong winds, and then into New Hampshire and Maine as well overnight Wednesday into Thursday, gusting up near 60. The coastlines, again, out here near the Cape, I wouldn't be surprised to see gusts up near 70 miles an hour are going to be a very real possibility as all of this wind energy kind of works on through. And then even behind it, I think Thursday afternoon, a pretty breezy day through much of the Northeast. Not as bad as Wednesday night, but still breezy nonetheless. So all that combined, you get the idea. We could run into some power outage concerns. Now, what about snow? This is the NAM model. It's the same model I just showed you. I think doing an all right job here. I think the most of the snow that falls will be into New York State here, kind of down even into the mountains of West Virginia. In that general area, you get the idea here. Now, this right here in kind of near Erie and up here towards the Tug Hill, just north of the Tug Hill, that's lake effect. But you'll notice even outside of the lake effect, a good band of snow, probably 1 to 3 inches plus in higher elevations, I would say, out of that backside band of snowfall. And even some snow into the mountains of Vermont and New Hampshire are possible. But overall, this snow shield has shifted kind of westbound over the past couple of days in the models. All right, what about other places? Let's talk about the Midwest a little bit. I am expecting some snowfall here and not really worrying about a rain threat. You'll notice that cold air working in this afternoon into this evening. Now, we'll get into overnight tonight and notice kind of these isolated snow squalls through Minnesota, back down into portions of Iowa, seeing some pockets of some heavier snowfall. And then it's tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday, that the lake effect really ramps up here into the upper peninsula of Michigan, through the western shoreline of Michigan, getting very heavy snowfall rates. Going to be more than enough to cause problems for sure, and that really picks up here overnight Wednesday into Thursday. And notice these snow squalls getting all the way down here into Indiana, Ohio, portions of Kentucky, up near Louisville. Do not be surprised to see some flakes fly, and it could pile up pretty quickly. It'll be cold out there, so the grassy areas, the elevated surfaces, a quick inch or two outside of the lake effect banded areas is definitely not out of the question. Through your Wednesday and then even into your Thursday here, notice that lake effect continuing here through the region. Now, how much snow are we talking? Well, like I said, I do think a pretty good bit here, depending on where you're at. Now, the lake effect areas here into western Michigan, up into the UP of Michigan, yeah, plenty of snow. We're talking a foot plus in many places, but I do want to also kind of throw a bone to you folks down here into the Ohio and Tennessee Valley, back down into this region. Like I said, I think a couple snow squalls break containment, could pile up in a couple places to a quick inch or two. Now, not everyone will see them. They're like rain showers, just snow. So, one town could see an inch, a town over could see absolutely nothing. That's just the name of the game. But definitely have that kind of thought process in your mind when you're thinking about it. And then even the mountains down into western North Carolina, western Virginia, and West Virginia, I do think we'll get some northwest flow down into North Carolina, probably 1 to 3 inches plus, again, depending on elevation on those northwestern facing slopes. Higher totals into West Virginia. More like 3 to 5 plus inches of snow. And then obviously look at all this lake effect up into Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. More than a foot of snow is going to be easy to come by for many of you folks. All right, that's the current storm system. Let's briefly touch on what's on the way after it, and then I'll let you go. I try to keep these videos under 30 minutes, so we'll see if we can do that today, but kind of difficult when you break things down a little bit more like I just did. Either way, though, here we go. So the pattern ahead, let me back this up a little bit. This is our 500 millibar height anomaly forecast from the GFS, and basically it just shows us where are the pockets of cold air moving and where are the warmer pockets of air moving. And this is tomorrow morning. Obviously, a big pocket of cold air. That's what's firing off our storm system. That continues to work into the east here and kind of gets on out of here by the weekend. Now, that does not necessarily mean we're going to warm up. I still think we'll be chilly in the east through the weekend. But notice by the time we get to Saturday, another storm signal into the plains, kind of crossing down through Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska. And eventually what happens later this weekend into early next week is this little piece of energy or this little trough gets kind of stuck under this bigger ridge in the overall picture. So it's really like a short wave stuck under a long wave. And what that tells me is that's a recipe for maybe a cutoff low to occur. And I would not be surprised to see that later this weekend into early next week. Now, the overall pattern, again, would support warmer temperatures in the east, but you get one of these little cutoff lows, that could bring some cloudy weather, some rainy weather, maybe snowy weather to higher elevations wouldn't be out of the question. With a pattern like that. That gets us to the 15th of December. After that, notice what happens. Another little shot of some troughing followed by a ridge, then another little trough followed by a ridge, and it's right around this time frame, December 20th, that I think things get a little bit more interesting, a little bit more questionable with the models as they kind of diverge a little bit in their thinking. But notice the GFS, and remember this time frame, right around the 20th, showing a little bit of a southern slider storm system into portions of the southeast, and this is only 4 or 5 days before Christmas. Could this bring some snow? I'm not saying it will, but it's a distinct possibility still, 10 days out, plenty of time to figure it out. But what it does tell me is, we can keep a couple people on the table here for the white Christmas forecast. Now, I'm not saying it's going to snow in Birmingham or in the Florida Panhandle on Christmas, or not even Nashville or Louisville for that matter. But what I am saying is I don't think that the pattern is completely over for Christmas time. I don't think we can just pack it up and say maybe next year here through portions of the east outside of those normal kind of favored areas that would see a white Christmas. So that's the GFS. You'll notice then that troughing hangs around even through Christmas and then tries to warm up around Christmas itself. But that kind of gets way out there. All right, let me show you the GFS operational run for the same kind of time frame. Here's our big storm system. Obviously, that works on through. Then here comes the next one. That does bring some snow, even some ice through Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan here into this weekend, and then some rain through the Ohio Valley and some snow into the Northeast. Now, not a potent system. But following that, we get another little system to try to work on through. And you'll notice that's kind of the theme through the long run. It's just system after system. And then by the time we get near the 20th, I talked about that time frame, you'll notice a little bit of a system kind of further south. We've got low pressure here, but what we also have is high pressure and cooler air riding along with the system. Notice how they're vertically stacked here. You don't have the high pressure behind the storm like you would normally get with a cold front. This tells me northern energy and southern energy are trying to work together a little bit more, and where they work together could maybe produce some winter weather somewhere in the eastern half of the country. Definitely something we'll watch right around the time frame of the 20th. And definitely a period to watch. Now, the European model, what about it? In its operational run, kind of a similar story. Here's that next little storm system I mentioned later this weekend. Brings some snow, brings some rain to some folks, maybe even a little bit of ice. We'll definitely break that down more in depth tomorrow and the next day after we're done with our current storm system. And then it's the same theme. It's just storm system after storm system. But again, check this out. This is around the 20th. This is a time frame I'm absolutely watching because of the setup. We have high pressure. Like I said, this indicates to me, generally speaking, high pressure that comes out of the north is going to bring some cooler air, and a storm system that is further south, even with its own little pocket of cold air attached to it. And this is a recipe for a higher likelihood of some southern or mid-Atlantic snow. And you'll even notice that in here. This is, again, right around the 20th. You get a little bit of snow down here into Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio. And if I take a little sounding here over the Carolinas, for example, we'll do right over Charlotte. And yeah, I get it. This is way out there. And I'll tell you firsthand, this is way out there. So don't buy into it too much. But, temperature in the 30s and 40s with rainfall, with an overall semi-favorable setup for some winter weather is worth watching. Now, I'm going to reiterate it 1,000 times over. I'm not saying it's going to snow 10 days from now. But what I am saying is it's the next time frame I'm watching for the potential of snow. And that's kind of all you can do in the wintertime in the South. You got to just watch the time frame that could be favorable and then go from there. Now, another model I'm going to show you, this is the Euro AI model. This is kind of the new kid on the block, if you will, and kind of integrating some of that new AI technology with weather modeling. And this is the same time frame right around the 20th. Notice a very well-defined little storm system in the southeast, also a pocket of cold air to the north. This gives a higher likelihood for snowfall than even the other two models. This would supply cold air and interact with this southern sliding storm system. And I do think that is something that we can continue to watch here as we enter just before Christmas, that couple of days beforehand. Then even after the fact, the Euro AI model kind of keeps the cold pattern going in the eastern half of the country. So final thing I'll show you, then I'll let you go. Snowfall within a 24-hour period of time through the ensembles. This is the GFS for the current storm. Like I mentioned, I would ignore some of this southern bit kind of down here. Just pretend that that's not there. But the northern bit, probably even still overdone, honestly, on the GFS. I don't know why he's out to lunch. But either way, we'll kind of move on from that. Next storm system, there's the signal for that through Iowa. Into Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. That would be this weekend, like I mentioned. After that, another storm signal about 7 to 10 days from now. And then here's that time frame around the 20th. Notice this block of, uncertainty in the model, obviously, but you get the idea that a snowy pattern tries to return to the east somewhere. Now, that could be the southeast, that could be the mid-Atlantic, that could be the Ohio Valley, that could be the Great Lakes, that could be anywhere. But notice, again, watching that time frame. And the European model, pretty similar story. Here's that next storm signal this weekend up into the Midwest, even tries to bring some snow into portions of the Northeast. Then another storm signal about 7 days from now. And then we get into that later out time frame right around the 20th. And not quite as pronounced as the GFS, but you get the idea further south here with some of these members trying to bring some snow. And like I mentioned, very high uncertainty here. But the overall pattern supports something a little bit more interesting. And after that, the European kind of brings even a couple more little southern systems that try to get the magic going here towards Christmas time. Alrighty, folks, well, that's all I got for you on this Tuesday. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. Like the video and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. With that said, y'all have a great one. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.